Hello everyone, this is part 15 of What If Naruto Was Raised by His Father, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe, it gives me more motivation. Enjoy. The meaning of being born, for humans to find the answer, it is the one freedom God gave them. Sakura sat in the high bleachers of the arena waiting for the third part of the Chunin exam to begin. Only one of her students had made it to the third and final part of the exam. Yukio, it scared her that he made it, she knew what that kid could do. From what she heard a month ago from Masakazu, that Yuki had gone a bit off during the exam. That only brought her back to thinking of Sasuke, he'd gone from what he heard the same way. Once she heard that she'd gone to his home right away, in fear. Flashback. Sakura ran as fast as she possibly humanly could towards Yukio's home in the far end of Konoha near the Uchiha district. She'd been running now for a good 5 minutes, fear taking hold of her. She heard the snake was but something deep down scared her. She heard that a man confronted them and said something to the blonde, and then knocked him out. After that, he wasn't the same. She hadn't realized how close she'd been to the Uchiha district, so she continued to run. She knew that Sasuke hated people around there, and once almost killed a stray dog for coming too close to it. She never knew what happened to the animal and frankly, she didn't want to know. So as she continued to run to the blonde's home, she was suddenly caught off guard. She hadn't noticed another person behind her, she hadn't even felt another presence till it was too late. She was suddenly grabbed from behind and thrown against the back of a tree. She winced in pain and cursing under her breath for letting her guard down even in Konoha when there were enemy ninjas still hanging around. She didn't dare open her eyes. She just waited until a harsh, yet comforting voice woke her back up. Sakura? Asked a certain Uchiha. As Sakura opened her eyes, she was staring into the cold black eyes of none other than Uchiha Sasuke. His body was pressing against hers with a kunai at her end ready to K at any moment. She looked shocked at the man before her and red started to fill her cheeks. But this time, it wasn't with rage. Sasuke, said Sakura, sounding equally confused in the predicament that they were in. Instantly realizing what position they were in, he quickly moved away and looked in the other direction. You could tell he was mad at himself for attacking her, but there was some other emotion in his eyes that she could not decipher. What the hell are you doing here? Snapped Sasuke as he looked at her with an intense glare. What the hell are you talking about? Said Sakura as she realized for the first time she was no longer outside the Uchiha district, she was now inside it. Oh my god. Sasuke, Sakura stuttered as she looked around, only to see old walls stained with dried blood. Get out, Sasuke shouted, rather rudely. I swear I didn't mean to come in here, I was on my way to. I said, get out, Sasuke yelled. When he went to make a slight move towards her to scare her away, a blonde jumped down in front of him, only measuring a little more than half his height. Leave Sakura-sensei alone, shouted Yukio as he held 4 scrolls between each finger and glared at the Uchiha with eyes that could K. Why Yukio, what are you? I heard you scream from my house, he said bluntly as the man and boy glared each other down into the ground. Sakura looked at the two. She was still flat against the wall with the boy in front of her and the man she once liked only feet away. She was lost. She didn't know what to do or how to react. That was until she noticed what scrolls exactly he was holding. Her breath was cut short as she looked at the 4 black and white scrolls that he held. Sasuke noticed her shiver and look wide-eyed at the things. He had seen her scared before, but this was something he'd never seen in his years knowing her. Whatever the boy held, Sasuke knew Sakura was scared of it, and if she was scared of this brat then he knew that it must be something horrid. Just as Sasuke was going to make a move to stop the blonde brat, he saw Sakura give a low sigh while looking at the blonde. Yukio, turn around, said Sakura. The boy only glared at the ground and did as he was told, moving his forehead into her line of view. She gave a since flick of her fingers and the boy was sent more than 20 feet away from her and knocked unconscious. Sasuke's eyes were wide, he'd never seen her do such a thing. He forgot she had a lot of power now, but to think a single flick could cause the boy to go that far, how much chakra had she had in those 2 fingers? Quote, quote. Sasuke stayed silent as the pink-haired ninja walked over towards the boy and looked around his neck and chest for something, which she obviously couldn't find, then smiled as she fell on her butt next to him and hung her head low. Her breathing was hard and harsh. She used up a little too much chakra, and it didn't help that she didn't have much left after training that morning. Sasuke silently walked over to her to see her smiling and breathing hard. Sakura noticed Sasuke picking up one of the scrolls. Just as he was going to open it, Sakura lunged at him and they both fell on the ground, with her still panting and holding the scroll that was in his hands. She was shaking all over. Don't, please, don't ever open this. I don't want to lose you, too, Sakura muttered as she collapsed on top of the Uchiha. Sasuke was now holding her and sitting up, while the boy lay only a mere 10 feet away from them. He looked to the pink-haired ninja as she held the small scroll in her hand. If anyone were to see this scene, only bad things would come to the poor Uchiha. He lifted the woman up and looked lost in what to do. He couldn't just leave her there, and he couldn't just leave the boy there, too. Even though he wanted to leave the brat lying where he was too. He used a technique that sort of resembled the fourth's body flicker, brought her home, left her in his bedroom, and then went back for the kid. Sakura awoke hours later. She was laying in someone else's room. She could tell that right away. She knew it wasn't Lee's. His room was bright, while this one was dark. There on the couch across from her was Yuki, still unconscious. She then quickly got up and walked over to him to make sure he was okay. She knelt down to his level and looked him in the eyes. She ran her hand over his forehead and sighed with relief. That's when she realized where she was again. She quickly stood up and looked around the large room, and noticed well more heard as the rain came down. She saw the door opened slightly, and silently walked over to it. She peered out to see the back of a raven-haired man and the Uchiha crest. Her heart nearly skipped a few dozen beats when she realized she had been in his bed. After the little heart attack she had going on, she took a deep breath and went outside to where he was located. Sat watching the rain. As she came up from behind, he narrowed his eyes until he realized it was Sakura and not the brat, and then watched her as she sat down beside him. They stayed silent for over 15 minutes until she finally spoke. Thank you, He stayed silent and looked out into the large yard. She silently looked around the long outdoor walkway. She'd never been to his home before, and she really liked it. What were you looking for before? He queried, causing her to look away from the house, to him, and then to the ground. He stayed silent, but his gaze was questioning. The other two told me he started to act weird after they came out from the forest. Saying a man went up to him and said things to him, and then he changed. I was scared to death that it might be Orochimaru. Yeah, since he does kind of remind me of you. We're nothing alike. No, he's just like you, Sasuke. Every single bit, except the hair. He simply gave her a nasty look. Think about it. He has your glare, personality, can use fire-style jutsu. He's a copy of your personality. He stayed silent. I hope the rain clears up soon. I don't want to have to walk home in this, Sakura said as she pulled her leg up and placed her chin on top of it. How long? What? You and Lee, said Sasuke as he looked more deeply into the rain. I don't know, a month now. Maybe 2. I thought you didn't like him. People change, Sasuke. You should know that more than anyone, said Sakura, her voice trailing off. What's that supposed to mean? He shot back as he looked at her. What do you mean? What do you mean by that? Sasuke, you should know better than anyone when you went to go. Sensei, my head hurts, said Yukio as he came out of the room, looking like he just woke up and stuffing the scrolls in his pocket. As the boy looked up, he saw Sakura and Sasuke glaring at one another. Does it? Let me take a look, she said with a smile as she got up, walked over to him and placed a hand on his forehead. You're burning up. Come on, I'll take you to my place. Go wait in the front, but stay under the shelter, said Sakura as the boy nodded and started to walk to the front. Why not take him home, where he belongs? There would be no point. No one is there waiting for him, said Sakura as she bowed her head and walked the same path that her student took. Thank you again, Sasuke, she said as she walked back. End of flashback. Sakura sat next to Shikamaru, whose arms were spread out behind hers and Temari's, who was only there because the Kazekage had been there. The reason he was there was because 4 people from the sand had made it to the finals. The Reikage was there as well, along with the Mizukage. The Hokage, on the other hand, was smiling to herself as she sat between the Kazekage and the Mizukage. The only reason for that was because there were 2 people standing alongside the Kazekage, which made her smile. There on his left was his elder brother, and then on his right was a female with long sea greenish hair, whom was wearing a black dress that was sleeveless, and that ended to her mid-thigh. She wore her head protector of sand around her waist and long black gloves with no fingers that reached her elbows. And a long piece of metal on both arms that had a leaf symbol on one and a sand symbol on the other, netting that came out but a little ways from under her skirt, and coming up from the V-shaped cut in her dress that surprisingly showed cleavage. Her face held a smile as she looked around, and she was the only one smiling besides the Hokage. The matches began. Sakura looked around and noticed Shino, Hinata, Choji, Ino, Kiba with his arm wrapped around some female she didn't recognize, and Akamaru sitting next to her trying to lick her face every 2 seconds. In that order. She gave a smile then looked over to where Temari was sitting. Alongside her was Tenten and Neji. She was quite amazed that everyone from the old Rookie 9 was sitting together, well except Naruto. Her other 2 students were sitting in the front so they could be as close as they could to see the battles. The only people from the Rookie 9 who hadn't been there was Lee, but he was gone on a mission. Then the battles started. The first battle was between a ninja from Mist and a ninja from Leaf. She hadn't recognized the one from Leaf at all. As she sat there watching the outcome, she didn't notice a body sit beside her until the match was over when she heard someone mumble, "HN," right next to her ear. As Sakura looked over, her eyes widened. Shikamaru was probably the only one to notice the presence. "Sasuke, I'm surprised to see you here. With you being an Anbu and all, I thought the Hokage would have you on guard duty," Shikamaru said lazily as Temari looked at Sasuke, seeing him for the first time since he was 12. "That's the Uchiha snob?" Temari asked a little too loudly as she leaned across her boyfriend to look at the Uchiha, who was looking at her oddly. "Why is she here?" Sasuke asked as he looked to her, then Shikamaru, who was watching the clouds as she lay across him, then to Sakura. "She is here because her brother is here. Gaara is the Kazekage, and she's sitting with us because she and Shikamaru are dating," said Sakura matter-of-factly as another battle began, this time between 2 leaf ninjas. "You 2 are dating," Sasuke mumbled, showing emotion for once. "Too bad it was of disgust." "Yeah, since we were, like, 16, said Temari as she got up and sat back in the bleachers. Shikamaru continued to gaze at the clouds until a thought struck him. "Sakura, what did you want to talk with me about the other day? Dad told me you came over. I left 10 minutes before you came." "The other, Shikamaru? That was last month," said Sakura looking at him incredulously. "Troublesome. So what was it?" "It was about Naruto and the 4th, said Sakura as stuffed her hand in a pocket and pulled out a small photo. Shikamaru took it from her and looked it over. "Yeah, I was wondering when you were going to come talk to me about this," Shikamaru stated, now getting the attention of Temari, Sakura and Sasuke. "So, you've been thinking about it, too?" "No." Sakura hung her head low. "But I knew you might," he replied, returning the photo. "You knew I might?" Sakura asked as she looked to Shikamaru while Sasuke gazed at the photo she held. "I'm not dumb, Sakura. I know what people are thinking half the time. I've seen you looking at that before," said Shikamaru now looking at the battle. "The redhead's going to loose in about 10 minutes, so we still got some time to talk before it's over," said Shikamaru looking back to the clouds. "You're not one to judge a battle so quickly. That kid's a show-off. He won't last. Anyways, what was it exactly you wanted to talk about? I thought you might know something. Or at least tell me what you think. None of the adults will tell me anything about the 4th, not even about his background." Shikamaru stayed silent, placed his fingertips together and closed his eyes. Sasuke had seen this only once before but never knew why the Nara boy did it. What is he doing? He's thinking. That's how Shikamaru comes up with all his plans. He's Leaf's greatest stagiaist. You already know his IQ is over 200, whispered Sakura as she watched. Sasuke stayed silent. He, in fact, hadn't known that the boy's IQ was over 200. And frankly, it scared him. Not that he'd let it show. Then in an instant his eyes opened, his arms went behind the two girls again and looked up at the clouds. Well, said Sakura, I can't tell you a thing. Their appearance seems to be exactly alike, to the point where it's not just a coincidence. The only way you're going to get the information you need is to go to his family tree, and I don't even know where that is. The most likely place would be in his house, and the only person with the key and the knowledge to know where the files would be located would be the fourth himself or Naruto, and it's unlikely that he'd even tell you. Since he's not here to tell, added Shikamaru as he narrowed his eyes a bit and looked at Sasuke. He probably doesn't know, muttered Sasuke as he watched the kid that Shikamaru said would lose, actually lose. It's Yukio's turn, said Sakura, sounding hollow. Hey, it is that brat, said Temari, remembering the way he challenged her for no reason. Sakura stayed silent, eyes glued to the fight. It was almost time to begin. Sakura, is he one to take lightly? I heard about his battle skills, but not about exactly what he can do, said Shikamaru as he street USD the girl. Yukio isn't a person I would want to be alone with if I were the enemy. Even though I can easily take him down, he's not one to take to lightly. What do you mean? He's a genius. Genius, you say? He didn't sound so smart when I fought him, laughed Temari. Not that kind. A genius as in the art of king the person's mind. King one's mind? Shikamaru asked. Yeah, Yukio, what he can do is scary. He trip his victims, slowly making them lose their mind. Then he KS them, quite slowly and very painfully. Or, when he's in a bad mood, he'll finish it quick, said Midori as she appeared behind the adults, her head resting on Sakura's shoulder. Midori, when? Asked a half-frightened Sakura. Look, he's going to use it. All the adults turned their gazes to Sakura, whose skin had gone pale and her eyes wide as she watched the young man fight. You're an idiot, aren't you, you stupid leaf shinobi? All of you are weak. And look at that hairstyle, it's so weird. And that blonde looks so fake. Laughed a sand shinobi, who looked to be about 4 years older than Yukio. The blonde just stood his ground. The boy before him was holding an oddly shaped sword, and from what Yuki could tell, it controlled the moisture in the air, thus creating water. Is that so? I thought sand and leaf were allies. It's no good to have someone who doesn't believe in that treaty living, now is it? It just creates problems we'll have to clean up, and I hate cleaning up something that can be avoided, don't you? Yukio spat with a look that could have killed the elder boy where he stood. There's no such thing as an allies in a fight. True, but I don't think your sibling would like to hear that now, would they? How do you know about Jashuto? I know everything about him, because I know what you did. It's your fault that he SD. I didn't do that. Shut up, yelled the other boy as he charged towards the blonde. He slammed the end of his sword into the ground, causing it to explode. Yes, you did. You killed him. It may have not been intentional, but you did. Remember all that blood. And shut up. It wasn't my fault, yelled the elder with another attack, this time nearly causing the blonde to lose his arm. A psychotic look spread across Yukio's face. Yes, it was. Remember, you were in sound when it happened. How do you know about that? I was there, I saw you do it. I didn't do a thing. Exactly. Because of your fear, your father has to go living every day without his eldest and most promising son, sneered Yuki as he watched the elder boy start to go insane and throw most, if not all his weapons towards him. What is he doing? Asked Temari as she leaned forward, watching the two boys dodge each other's attacks. He's getting the other one mad. To what point? Waste all his weapons and chakra until he has nothing left. Did your kid even take into account what techniques the other one knows? Shikamaru asked as he leaned forward with his elbows on his knees and his head in his hands, watching closely. No, Yuki just wants the other guy to get disorientated. He likes to fight people when they're like that, he's weird that way. Oops. Hey, Sakura-sensei, look. He's pulling out his scrolls. Now things are going to end soon. They always do after this. Midori smiled as she watched closely from behind the adults. He's an idiot for even creating such a thing. His whole family was stupid for creating it, said the orange-haired lad sitting next to his female companion. What happened? A raven-haired man shouted as he placed his mask back onto his face. He quickly looked around, only to see Itachi standing behind him, gazing at the wall. Flashback. Naruto had kicked the metal rod with his foot so it went flying right into his hand as he had hopped. Then, with all his might, he ran towards Itachi and, at the last minute, switched directions and pushed the metal rod into the eye socket of the masked man. As he thought, the man grabbed the pole and threw it at the wall. When the man seemed to look straight to where the blonde had been, his mask was kicked off his face by the blonde-haired man and thrown in Itachi's direction. Naruto's eyes had grown wide at the sight of the man. He gazed at him for a mere few moments upon his scared-up face to see his right eye being covered. Then as quickly as he had grabbed the rod moment before, he jumped upon it, causing it to bend slightly and throw him up in the air, just enough to get him back onto the rooftops. He threw a dozen exploding tags down to the men and ran off, with an explosion following soon after. End flashback. That brat. How could you let him get away? Toby shouted as he jumped up from the ground, only to realize that the whole right side of his cloak had been torn away, revealing his metal body. Itachi looked at him curiously, his suspicion growing. I was busy saving you. I could have just left you to s, said Itachi, remembering for a brief moment he was sure he had seen red in his right eye. Toby stayed silent as he looked around the trashed street for something to cover his side in. The blonde was now far away from the village as humanly possible. His body involuntarily collapsed against the first tree he stopped by. His heart was pounding like crazy. Never in his life had he been as scared as that. Him totally defenseless against two psychotic men and yet managing to escape. Now that was something to tell his grandkids, if he could get himself to live that long, anyway. As his back hit the tree and his butt hit the ground, he sat there looking out into the sky, not believing that he had survived again. That was way too close. I have to keep myself hidden better, said the blonde to no one in particular, but unknown to him, someone had heard him, and someone was watching. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.